On May 14, 2026, the President of the United States landed in Beijing. He did not come to negotiate from strength, he came to ask for help. The most powerful country on earth had been fighting a war in Iran for 75 days. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage that carries 20% of the world's oil, had been closed by Iranian forces since February 28th. American military operations had failed to reopen it. Global energy markets were in free fall, and the only country with the influence to end the crisis was the one America had spent 3 years trying to cripple. So Donald Trump flew to Beijing, and inside the Great Hall of the People, Xi Jinping handed him the biggest ultimatum any American president has received in modern history. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that ultimatum was, why America had no choice but to accept it, and what it means for every country watching this story unfold. Because this was not just about Iran. This was not just about oil. This was about a single word that Xi Jinping placed on the table in front of the American president. A word that changes the entire map of the world if America agrees to it. And right now it appears America already has. To understand what happened in that room in Beijing, you need to understand why America arrived with almost nothing to bargain with. The Iran war began on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iranian military and government facilities, including the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran's response was immediate and catastrophic. Within 72 hours, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz to all international shipping. 150 tankers were stranded instantly. Shipping insurance costs spiked 400%. Brent crude jumped $22 in a single trading session. Germany ran out of jet fuel reserves and had to request an emergency supply from Israel. South Korea, which imports 60% of its crude through the strait, started capping petrol prices to stop civil unrest. Dubai International Airport was hit by Iranian drones and shut down entirely. America launched a military operation it called Project Freedom to escort tankers through the strait by force. It did not work. The operation was paused on May 6th after Iran refused to back down. Talks in Islamabad failed. A ceasefire had held since April 8th, but barely. Iran was charging tolls on the few ships it allowed through. The United States had blockaded Iranian ports in retaliation. The global economy was bleeding out through a 33-kilometer gap in the Persian Gulf, and America could not stop it. There was only one country that Iran would listen to. China had been buying 77% of all Iranian crude oil exports, worth $29 billion in 2024 alone. Iran's total oil revenues that year hit $67 billion, levels the country had not seen in over a decade, almost entirely because China kept buying despite every round of Western sanctions. China was not just Iran's trading partner, China was Iran's lifeline. And Xi Jinping knew exactly what that made him in this moment. The Trump-Xi summit lasted 3 days. Leaders from America's largest corporations attended portions of the meeting. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was there, trade officials, diplomats, military advisors. On the surface, the agenda covered tariffs, semiconductors, and agricultural trade. But there was another item on the table. American officials had been publicly calling on China to pressure Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz in the days before the summit. Washington needed Beijing to make a phone call that Washington itself could not. Xi Jinping did not say no. He said, "Here is my price." Analysts briefed after the summit, and reporting confirmed by CBS News, revealed what Chinese officials communicated directly inside those meetings. Beijing's cooperation on the Strait of Hormuz would require American concessions on Taiwan. Xi Jinping's exact framing confirmed publicly, Taiwan must be handled properly. Trump's response, delivered from inside China, was to say both sides should cool it. Read that again carefully. The President of the United States standing on Chinese soil, responding to a demand about Taiwan. The island America has spent decades pledging to defend, told everyone to cool it. That is not a neutral response. That is a concession dressed in casual language. Taiwan was not the only item on Xi's list. After 3 days of talks, the summit produced a series of announcements. China signaled it would cut tariffs and expand farm market access. Treasury Secretary Bessent confirmed China had approved a transfer agreement for TikTok. On the surface, a deal between equals. But look at what America brought to the table versus what China left with. America arrived needing three things: the Strait of Hormuz reopened, a reduction in chip export restrictions, and access to Chinese rare earth materials that are essential for every advanced weapon system it manufactures. China already controls 70% of global rare earth mining, 93% of permanent magnet manufacturing, and it just demonstrated it can keep Iran's entire economy alive through any sanctions regime Washington tries to impose. Meanwhile, American chip companies had been cleared to sell NVIDIA's H200 processors to 10 Chinese firms. Not a single delivery had been made. Chinese companies, under guidance from Beijing, quietly pulled back from the orders, choosing instead to develop domestic chips through Huawei, letting America's most valuable technology company watch its China market share collapse to effectively zero. America was offering things China had already decided not to take. China was asking for something America had been refusing to give for decades. That is not a negotiation between equals. That is a debtor sitting across from his bank. None of what happened in Beijing was improvised. China spent the 10 years before this summit constructing the exact architecture that would make this moment possible. The 10,400-kilometer overland railway from China to Iran, completed in May 2025, 9 months before the war began, routes energy shipments entirely outside Western naval reach. No ocean, no Western port, no enforceable sanctions standing in between. The 25-year, $400 billion cooperation agreement with Iran, signed in 2021, locked in Beijing's access to Iranian oil before any Western government understood what it meant. The yuan for oil payment system, running since 2012, means that every barrel China buys from Iran moves without a single US dollar, without a single Western bank, and without a single enforcement mechanism America controls. And then there are the rare earths. In October 2025, when the US-China technology war reached its peak, Beijing imposed rare earth export restrictions, the materials that make fighter jets, missiles, electric vehicles, and semiconductors possible. American defense contractors immediately began emergency reviews of their supply chains. Then China released the restrictions, then imposed them again the following month, then used them as a bargaining chip at the very next summit. This is not a country reacting to events. This is a country that spent a decade building the leverage to dictate terms and is now collecting on that investment. The Strait of Hormuz was not just a crisis. It was the moment China's leverage architecture became impossible to ignore. When Trump left Beijing on May 15, 2026, he fist-pumped on the tarmac as attendees waved American and Chinese flags behind him. He said the talks were a great success, and in a narrow sense, he was right. A deal on tariffs, a framework on AI guardrails, agricultural purchases resumed, a TikTok agreement confirmed, a shared statement that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. But here's what that tarmac photograph does not show. America flew to China needing the crisis to end. China already had its oil. America asked for cooperation on Iran. China named a price involving Taiwan. America told both sides to cool it. There is a version of this story where America won the summit, and there is a version where America agreed to terms it has not yet publicly admitted. History will decide which version is true. But the rare earths are still controlled by Beijing. The railway to Iran is still running. The yuan payments have not stopped. And Xi Jinping did not fly to Washington. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Do you believe America walked away from Beijing with a real deal? Or did Xi Jinping just collect the biggest diplomatic payment any Chinese leader has received since Mao? Drop your answer below. Both sides of this argument are defensible, and I want to know which one you are making. If this video changed how you read what is happening right now, subscribe and turn on the bell, because in the next video we are tracking exactly what China does with the concession it just received, and the move has already started.